Hello, I'm Stephanie, your student physical therapist assistant, and I will be explaining the concentric and eccentric muscle contractions, how they differ, including some examples, and their plane of motion and axis of motion. So a concentric muscle contraction is the shortening of a muscle, and an eccentric muscle contraction is the elongating of a muscle. My first example is horizontal adduction. This is where we bring in our shoulder horizontally towards our body. My agonist mover is the anterior deltoid. It shortens. This is why it is a concentric muscle contraction. It is the transverse plane and it lies on the vertical axis. My second example is the external rotation of the shoulder. Here I have my agonist muscles, the infraspinatus and the teres minor, that lie on my shoulder blades, and they are shortening every time I externally rotate my arm. My antagonist muscles of the external rotation are the subscapularis and teres major. Those muscles internally rotate, making the muscles elongate, but when externally rotating, my infraspinatus and teres minor are shortening, making this be a concentric muscle contraction. The plane of motion and axis of motion of this muscle movement is transverse plane, and it goes on the vertical axis. My third example is shoulder abduction. Here we abduct our shoulder away from our body. So from here and away. So my agonist muscle is the middle deltoid, and that shortens every time we abduct the shoulder, making it a concentric muscle contraction. My antagonists are the pec major and my latissimus dorsi, which pull my arm back downwards. Shoulder adduction. The plane of motion of my shoulder abduction is the frontal plane, and it lies on the anterior posterior axis. My next muscle movement is the shoulder flexion. Here we have another concentric muscle contraction because my agonist muscles are the biceps brachii. They are shortening every time I flex my shoulder. The antagonist muscle of this muscle movement is my triceps, specifically the long head of the triceps. In this muscle movement, it lies on the sagittal plane, medial lateral axis. Now moving on to my eccentric muscle contractions. This is where the muscles are elongating. My first example for the eccentric muscle contraction is an elbow extension. Here we have my agonist muscles are the triceps that are helping my elbow extend. My antagonists are my biceps brachii when shortening and then elongating with the triceps. The plane of motion in this muscle movement is the sagittal plane on the medial lateral axis. My last example of an eccentric contraction. This is where the muscle, my pronator teres, is elongating every time we pronate our forearm. That is my agonist muscle. My antagonist is my supinator. The plane of motion of this muscle movement is the transverse plane, the vertical axis. And that's all that I have for you today. Thanks for watching.